Hey, so today I'm going to do a walkthrough video of the Audient Patchbays. I've had a lot of people come to me and ask if I can make a video walkthrough of how the Patchbays work. So today I'm just going to walk through the very basic functionality of how it works, and hopefully after watching this video you'll be able to go at the Patchbay with a little bit more confidence. Most Audient Patchbays that come with the consoles are pretty much the same. There might be a few variations in how they're wired, but generally the Patchbays are very, very similar across the Audient consoles. So yeah, let's jump in and have a look at how the Patchbays work for this Audient console. Cool, so here we are with the Audient Patchbay. So we're going to jump in and start having a look at the tape return path and the channel path just here. So first things first, we've got the tape return path and the channel path. Now you can see that under here you've got channel 1, and then here you've got channel 2, 3, 4, and this is a 48 channel console, so this goes all the way down to channel 48 just down here. So the tape return path. Now this is the return coming back from Pro Tools or Logic or whatever your DAW is. Back in the day, most of the recordings were done to analog tape, hence the name tape return. It was coming back from the tape machines, but nowadays most people are using some form of DAW, so rather than changing the name they've just kept it as tape return path. So this is where it comes back in from Pro Tools. Now you don't need to do anything on the Patchbay in order for this console to be accepting your return from Pro Tools. If you have an output of channel 1 with inside Pro Tools, it's going to come into tape return path 1. You don't need to do anything on here, it's automatically going to come up on channel 1 on the console. The channel path is the microphone path. So if you've plugged a microphone into channel 1 onto the console, this is basically where it's coming through. Again, in order to get the microphone into channel 1 on the console, you don't need to do anything on here. But this can be quite useful, same with the tape return path, if you're wanting to do some compression or any outboard processing. So if you've got a vocal that you're recording and you're wanting to record it with, say, a compressor on it, this is where you can use the inserts, so the send and the returns just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a couple of patch cables and let's patch in a compressor. So on the channel path where we're recording the vocal, I'm going to grab a green Bantam patch lead and go from the send, just there, send, and I'm going to patch this in to our Buzz audio compressor, just down here. Now with this Patchbay, the way that this is wired, we go into the bottom and out of the top, so any of the outboard external units, we go into the bottom and out of the top. So we're going from the channel path send into the bottom where it says Buzz, that's a Buzz compressor, and we go out of the top and we patch back into the return, just there, send and return. So now in theory the vocal is being sent out to the compressor. It's not actually returning back into the channel path just yet, even though we've plugged it in. What you've got to do is on channel 1, this is channel 48, but just imagine this is channel 1, you've got just here above the microphone preamp level, insert active. You push that in, and now the compressor would be in the chain. This insert is post gain, so whatever you do to the volume, that's going to affect the amount of volume being sent into the compressor. So if you adjust the gain on here after you've patched in the compressor, chances are the compressor is going to be reacting differently. So that's the insert active for the microphone path there. Now if you're wanting to put a compressor on the tape return path, say if you're mixing a song and you're wanting to put a compressor or outboard EQ or saturation box, that's where this insert active for the tape is. You got the top section, the tape trim, and you push insert active, and that would be if we were plugging into the tape return path just there. So that's the same for all 48 channels on this console. And we've got the tie lines down here, which is where all the external preamps or the external EQs or 500 series compressors or reverb units, anything like that. Let's have a look at reverb for a second. Say if we had a vocal coming into channel 48 on the console and we were wanting to get some reverb on the vocal while they're tracking. What we could do is we could grab one of these auxiliaries, say auxiliary 1, and I'd probably take it from the short fader where the microphone is on, and I'd also put pre-fader just in case I change the short fader levels. So we're sending out of auxiliary 1. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to where it says auxiliary sender outputs, just here. I'm going to patch that out of here, and then I'm going to patch it into one of the reverb units. Now these reverb units are stereo in, but you can just go mono in and you'll still get a stereo out. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to patch this back into the tape return path of channel 47 and 48. Now there are a bunch of different ways that you can patch back in an external reverb. One of the ways is you could use the stereo effects returns just here. Now this is, sorry it's a little bit blurry there, in the center section of the console we've got these stereo effects returns. Now you could patch a reverb into here and now you've got 4 stereo effects returns that aren't taking up real estate on the console, so we can just send that to the mix and the effects returns will be coming back into that if you're patched into it on the Patchbay. The reason why I don't use these as much as I patch them back into these channels, the reason why I patch them back into the channels is because now I have the ability to actually EQ the reverb. So a lot of the time if I'm sending something out to a reverb and I bring it back onto the console, I might want to cut out a lot of the bottom end or reduce some of the kind of harsher frequencies in the top. So by patching it into 2 channels on the console, it gives me the ability to just shape it a little bit more. So if we're sending it out of auxiliary 1 on the short fader and then bringing it back into 47, 48 on here, we just need to go up here and make sure that these tape return paths, insert actives, have been pushed in. So that's one way that I do reverbs. There's a bunch of other ways as well, but I'm just going to do that for now and just unpatch some of these. Now if we were wanting to mix a song on this console and say we're mixing it into the stereo mix bus and then we're wanting to print that mix back into Pro Tools, what we've got to do in that case is, sorry, grab a band and patch lead, is go over to the mix outputs just here where it says mix outputs and we've got mix left. I'm going to patch that over here into the multi-track bus output 1 record A, and I'm going to grab another patch lead and go from mix right and patch that into 2. Now these multi-track bus outputs are basically, you can see along the top how you got 1 to 24 and then below that you've got record B. Now this is a 48 channel console, so 1 to 24 up here is basically your sending to Pro Tools from 1 to 24, and then the bottom says 1 to 24 again, but it's basically 25 through to 48. So if I wanted to send 2 channels into Pro Tools, I go mix outputs, left and right, into channel 1 and 2 on the multi-track bus outputs. So if I created a stereo track with inside Pro Tools and had the input as 1 and 2, now that's going to be accepting the mix bus from the console into Pro Tools. So you could do this, you could use this functionality here for a lot of different ways. It's great for stemming if you're making multiple stems within inside a mix. Say if you're wanting to bounce all the drums together or the guitars or anything like that, you can do that in the same fashion. Another useful thing is these mix inserts just here. You've got right next to those mix outputs is mix inserts. Now you've got a send and return for each of those. If I was wanting to patch in an external compressor on top of the mix bus, I could basically patch in the send and the returns from the mix insert into a compressor and bring it back into there, and I'll do that for the right side as well. And that means that now we've got a compressor sitting on top of the mix bus. We could do that, we could use an external EQ or anything like that if we wanted to shape the overall mix. So that's a pretty handy functionality to have. We've also got that for the subgroup inserts and outputs. So if you're using subgroups on this console, sending all the drums to these, say these 2 faders here on the subgroups, then we can patch a compressor and EQ just on those 2 subgroups, and that way we can control all of the drums all at once, which is great. We've also got these parallels just here as well. Now if you've got a vocal that you're wanting to send out to 3 different effects units, or if you've got a vocal that you're wanting to send out to 3 different compressors or saturation boxes, what you can do is you can actually take that microphone on channel 1 and send it into the parallel just on the left, and now these 3 sockets here are basically paralleling to that. So you could take all 3 outputs of these and patch it into 3 different boxes and then bring it into 3 different channels onto the console. So that's a pretty handy thing. The next thing I want to look at briefly is just these left island ties here. So if I've got a bunch of external microphone preamps that I'm wanting to use in a session, what I can do is I can have them sitting up on the console, patch the microphones into those preamps, and then use these left island or right island ties to patch it into the console. So if I just briefly come over here, we can see down here, it's quite hard to see because it's a little bit dark, but it says island ties to Audient Patchbay, 1 to 8, and then 37 to 40. So if I had a bunch of external preamps, I could essentially plug them into these island ties, and then I'd come over here. So if I patched into a number 1 on there, I could go to number 1 here on the island line ties on the left, go from 1, and now I could patch it straight into Pro Tools if I wanted to. I could go into channel 1 in Pro Tools, or I could bring it into the console on one of the either tape return paths or channel paths, depending on what I was wanting to achieve. Cool, so hopefully that video helps you understand how the Audient patch bays work a little bit easier. Most of the Audient patch bays are very similar. They might have subtle little quirks and slight differences, but generally the Audient patch bays are going to be pretty similar to this. If you didn't understand something, just drop me a line. If you want me to clarify something further, just get in touch with me. Also, if you've got any other questions or if you're wanting me to make any videos based on anything else, just let me know. That's the whole reason why I made this video, is a bunch of people got in touch with me asking if I can make a video to break down the patch bay. You can catch me on Facebook at Tiny Triumph Recordings, or on Instagram at Tiny Triumph Recordings. If you're inside the Massey campus, just, you know how to get in touch with me, come find me or drop me an email. And yeah, happy music making.